At the beginning of the 20th century, American children were routinely put to work in factories, mills, and even coal mines. And infant mortality rates were dangerously high. Alarmed by the appalling conditions faced by children in the workplace, concerned citizens advocated for the creation of a new federal agency that would protect their interests. Even President Theodore Roosevelt took up the call, declaring, "There are few things more vital to the welfare of the nation than accurate and dependable knowledge of the best methods of dealing with children." The agency that emerged from the protests, the Children's Bureau, was tasked with serving and protecting America's children more than a century ago. The first government agency in the world to advocate for children, the Children's Bureau was created by an act of Congress that President William Howard Taft signed in 1912. The next year, the Bureau became one of 4 agencies that anchored the brand new Department of Labor. Named as the first head of the Children's Bureau in April 1912, Julia Lathrop was also the first woman to head any federal agency. Despite these firsts, she could not vote in a federal election until the 19th Amendment granting suffrage to women was ratified in 1920. Lathrop tirelessly battled high childhood mortality as the Bureau's first area of focus. Groundbreaking research conducted by the Children's Bureau revealed that, out of all infants who died in their first year, nearly half died in the first month. And 70% of those first-year deaths resulted from congenital disorders or complications during birth. Better prenatal, delivery, and postnatal care was clearly an urgent priority. And research also showed that socioeconomic conditions were a major factor in infant deaths. The Children's Bureau also educated the public, publishing and distributing pamphlets and books to raise consciousness on all issues related to children's health. More than 1.5 million copies of the Bureau's booklet, Infant Care, were sent out to the public. In 1929, it was estimated that half of all American babies benefited from the information in the booklet. Lathrop's equally determined successor, Grace Abbott, doubled down on outreach, hosting a radio program called Your Child. The Children's Bureau, working with the National Child Labor Committee, a private advocacy group, also actively worked to document child labor. Photographs taken by Louis Hine, on assignment from the National Child Labor Committee, are classic masterpieces of documentary photography. After a number of failed attempts, a federal child labor law was finally passed in 1916. The Keating-Owen Child Labor Act, enforced by the Bureau, did not directly ban child labor. Rather, it sought to minimize it by outlawing the interstate commerce of goods produced by children put to work. The Keating-Owen Act was overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court in 1918. Congress tried again in 1919 with a law that sought to prevent child labor by imposing tax penalties. That law was also struck down by the High Court. Much later, under a New Deal program in the early 1930s, the Children's Bureau began developing industry-specific child labor codes. Once again, the Supreme Court stepped in, invalidating the legislation that mandated the codes. In 1938, the Fair Labor Standards Act directly banned child labor, except in farming, giving the Children's Bureau responsibility for enforcement. For once, the Supreme Court did not intervene, and the law stood ever since. In 1946, the Bureau was transferred out of the Labor Department. However, enforcement authority remained with the department. The Children's Bureau has been part of the Department of Health and Human Services since 1969. Despite organizational changes, the Children's Bureau continued to vigorously pursue its mission of partnering with federal, state, tribal, and local agencies to improve the overall health and well-being of the nation's children and families. Viewing the iconic photos of child workers in the early 1900s, we are reminded of the words of the Children's Bureau's first director, Julia Lathrop. "The justice of today is born of yesterday's pity." This video was brought to you by the Public Education Project, an independent nonprofit group dedicated to improving public knowledge of the government by sharing the rich history and exciting stories of the federal agencies that serve our nation. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and subscribe now to start your journey into the fascinating history of the U.S. government today. If you'd like to delve deeper into the rich history of the Children's Bureau or any other federal agency, be sure to visit our agency histories page at publiceducationproject.org. Featuring nearly 250 detailed pages showcasing the diverse stories of agencies dating back to the nation's founding. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok so you don't miss out on new videos and updates.